And away we go. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everyone, wherever you happen to be in the world today. Where I am in the middle of nowhere, Georgia, double secret location on double secret probation. It is 2 p.m. Eastern Standard Time currently as we get into the live portion here on YouTube. That is Coffee Talk on YouTube, or more specifically at Coffee Talk Live on YouTube, or simultaneously broadcast on Prepper University, wherever you happen to be joining us, as well as Twitter now, and that is at Coffee Talk Chat on Twitter. And can't forget Fistful of Radio, that is fistfulofradio.com. Podcasting out of Atlanta Monday through Thursday at 4 p.m. Eastern Standard Time and Friday at noon. As we go ahead and get ready to welcome some of the people who are joining us in the live portion on the YouTube section of the podcast. And I do try to read as many comments as I can so the people who are listening and not able to watch can keep up with the conversation. And there is Dusty. For those of you who can see, here's Dusty sitting in the chair. No kittens today. No kittens today because the kittens and Granny Smith, the mother, are at the vets. I dropped them off this morning, and I'll be picking them up before noon on Friday. Noon on Friday. So go ahead and acknowledge some of the people who are able to join us in the live stream today. It's D-Lo is here, Helter, Dragon, Keisha, Rock Valley Ready. Boogers is here. Cruising says was almost late from flagellating over using the word clip instead of magazine in my comment on the earlier video. Such a FUD. Well, you know, if you're old enough to have been in World War I, clip will slide through. Because remember, they were gravity fed. Automatic and semi-automatic, with the exception of the Luger. They were gravity-fed guns, and that's where you get clipped from. But anyways, Urban is here. Cyberjack Sr. is here. Stacy Lynn. Yadar Keaton says he's in Texas. Armored Ghost. Fluke Man. Michael Greer. He says he's from the Big Chicken. And Cruising says I learned on M1s in 1903s. And anyway, as we get ready to jump into the news, a lot to talk about, of course, as always. And at the top of the news, naturally, is the whole crisis with Israel. It's completely overshadowed the Ukraine now. People are kind of forgotten about that, and they're on this, although what Hamas did with their attack was a lot more barbaric than anything we've heard out of Russia. So away we go. And by the way, this is an interesting little snippet. People wonder about border crossings, because especially in the United States, we're seeing a big issue with people celebrating Hamas in most Western countries, in big cities, you know, Paris and London, and we're seeing it in Sydney at the Sydney Opera House, and New York, and all over different parts of the Western world. They're out there having a party. They're thrilled. Oh, yay, we burned, and no kidding, burned infants and toddlers to death, beheaded infants and toddlers, hung them. They're brutally murdering people that have nothing to do with whatever they think their conflict is. And in the U.S. border in particular, we have people pouring across not only our southern border, but the northern one as well, and have been throughout basically the entire Biden administration, because he just did away with everything that Trump did and says, oh, we don't need borders. There'll never be another foot of wall built, I think was his quote when he was running for election. There won't be another foot of wall built in this country. And now they're putting the wall back up because it's gotten out of hand. So if anybody's curious, during the Biden administration, and I looked this up earlier and I wrote it down, according to Department of Homeland Security, interviewed at the border, vetted at the border, they had, during the Biden administration, 72,823 special interest aliens. Now, what does that mean? Special interest alien is government speak for this guy might be part of a terrorist cell. But since he didn't commit a crime in the United States and his country of origin won't tell us any information, we're going to let him go. Let that sink in. That's just the ones they were able to count. That's just the ones that they caught or that went to the border willingly or went through a proper border crossing willingly. 72,823 during the Biden administration so far. Special interest aliens from Qatar and Turkey and Yemen and Iraq and Lebanon and Pakistan and Uzbekistan and all these other places. Seriously undesirable people that they were allowed to leave anyways because, oh, well, we can't find that they committed a crime in the U.S. if they're even telling you the truth about who they are. Leopold has joined us. This is nice to see that you're online, and he is in Vorarlberg, Austria. Excellent. Hope things are going all right there. Armand says lamestream news entirely one-sided with Israel, no America first perspective at all. And it is an America issue that is something that needs to be considered because, again, what is the chant? Death to Israel and death to America. This is what they're chanting, even on American soil at these parties that they're throwing for in celebration of Hamas. Their death to America. You're on American soil chanting this and waving your flags. These people need to go. They need to leave. They will bring it here. It needs to be addressed. Leopold says, don't you think they just use these kind of scare tactics to make sure people buy more before the winter sets so they can make good profits before the end of the year? What kind of scare tactics? What kind of scare tactics specifically? Johnny says, I'm here, but I might be leaving shortly to the mailbox. And Urban says, was watching clips from within Gaza as they were bringing the hostages in. One was naked in a truck while the residents of Gaza lined the street and hit her nude form with wood boards while cheering. Yeah. And you can't condone that. And we're seeing that in the United States and even from the BLM. And I'll talk about that here in a minute. That unfortunately, there's a lot of people who don't understand the mentality. They're not attacking military targets. You have a problem with the Israeli government, take it up with the Israeli government, but you're kidnapping people. You're kidnapping average Joe citizens and their families. You are kidnapping tourists from all over the Western world and torturing and killing them brutally, very brutally, and very horribly. All People has joined us, as well as Bulldozer. Flukeman says they're taking the innocent until proven guilty by a court too far. Monkey is here. Gary Edwards is here. Thanks for joining us. Urban says her right leg was bent at the knee in the wrong direction. Last I heard, she was in a hospital in Gaza with a critical head injury. German citizen named Shani Luke. Her mother is beside herself, I can imagine. She's lucky to get out at all. All People says, see Genesis 12:2-3, Galatians 3:8, Galatians 3:16. He's got some stuff for you for you to look up there. Oh, the warden is here. He says, good afternoon. Leopold says, don't you think they're inflating the conflict just to make sure they can ensure higher profits during the winter because people get scared and buy more than they would normally? And that could be, inflating. Are you talking about the Ukrainian conflict or the Israeli conflict? Because the media is going to blow any of them up just for advertising credit. They'll cram it into the news as much as possible just to get those advertising dollars and to get your attention, and also to justify how they misuse tax money. Johnny says to them, U.S. and Israel are big Satan and little Satan. Yeah, indeed. And Bulldozer says, I'm Jewish and have been to visit my people many times. This will escalate into a full-blown world war. And it's not a war that many people understand. And that's made clear. And this is the first article I'm going to pull up. People don't understand the mentality of how things work out there. They keep thinking in terms of Western rational, logical thought process, and that's not how these people are, and that's not how they live. That's not how they think. Again, analogical thought process based out of tribalism. It's very different, and there's a lot for saving face. There's a lot for revenge, and there's a lot for humiliating an enemy, which is why they're murdering children. Fox News, U.S. professor speaks out after his daughter is murdered by Hamas. It's not a war, but fanatical attacks on civilians. So here we go, and here's your nightmare. Israeli studies professor spoke out to Fox News after his daughter and son-in-law were killed by Palestinian Hamas militants as they went door to door near Be'er Sheva, intentionally murdering Israeli civilians. Ilan Tron, who previously taught at Brandeis University and the University of Missouri, said it is a misnomer to call the violent conflict a war in the traditional sense. He's been to the Middle East. He understands this, and that's what he's explaining. Given how his family and hundreds of others in Israel have been affected, Tron's daughter, Deborah, and her husband, Shlomi, barricaded their house about 25 miles from the Gaza border after they heard Arabic being shouted outside amid gunfire. Deborah was on the phone with her father when she was killed, but his grandson in the home survived. I remember learning the expression of war to end all wars. Don't think of this as a conflict that can be readily ended once and for all. The forces against them are so deep, so fanatical, that that's not the possibility. This thing was planned for months and months and months, Trowan said. Planned for months, planned for years, because this is what people in that region of the world live for. This is what they live for. They've been fighting about it for generations, time immemorial, going all the way back to the Bible days. A piece of paper with a signature on it's not going to end it. And people in the West don't understand this. And it makes me think of the Tet Offensive. And some of you who know your history from the Vietnam War know where I'm going with this. And the leader, and I forget his name, somebody can remind me in the comment section down here, during the Tet Offensive. And of course, Tet's a holiday in Vietnam, and nobody expected to be any conflict. And that's what the North Vietnamese leader was expecting. Okay, America's not going to expect anybody to do anything during Tet. So he used all of the remaining Viet Cong, and he had all the Viet Cong attack every U.S. military installation all at the same time during Tet, which was a complete slaughter, because fighting in the jungle and setting traps and ambushes and snipers is one thing, but actually attacking a fortified position with guys running around barefoot with AK-47s is something else. And I believe that they lost all of their Viet Cong that night. Around 50,000 men were killed trying to attack army bases. And it was a complete failure, but not to the North Vietnamese, because they said, if we lose 25 to every one American soldier, we're fine with that, just so that they get the message. And we lost that war because, again, I said it many times, we're playing chess and they're playing checkers. They will die to the last person because they want to dishonor you, discredit you. They want to make you afraid. They want to make you back down. They want to intimidate you. They want to get revenge, even if they don't know what they're getting revenge against. And this is a mentality people don't understand. And I bring this up because, in my mind, these so-called Palestinians are the Viet Cong of this era, because Iran and others of their neighbors that are fueling this are using them like the Viet Cong were used until they're used up. You see the idea? So catching up with some of the comments, Johnny says, and it would be scary. It'd be very difficult for Israel to close off completely its own country from any tourism because that is a huge revenue for the country. That's true. DIY says, I think the Christian Palestinians should be given a safe haven in the US and UK, as opposed to everybody else we let in. Kamal says both sides are evil. Keisha says in Ezekiel, it says that Magog, which may be Russia, will pair up with Persia, which is one ancient name of Iran. I don't know. I mean, there's a lot of speculation about all of that, and I don't like to dig too much into it. Leopold says it literally won't escalate into a full conflict because it would go against the interests of the company. They like to make it seem like we're always on the edge of a new world order. And if you keep people scared about the short term, they won't look at the long term, and that makes it easier to manipulate them. Well, that's why the news changes literally hour to hour. And people forget about stuff that happened a few days ago. They can't pay attention anymore. Their attention span is gone. Johnny says he was telling a coworker the other night that this particular strike was planned for at least 3 years, maybe 5. And Bulldozer says most people are sheep. True. And Gary says Chiang Kai-shek. Oh, I really can't remember. I can't remember if that's his name. Fluke Man says, imagine how the liberals would have reacted if it was whites attacking Israel. Oh, God. And Leopold says, conflicts are made to waste your time. It's like a magician. Never pay attention to what the magician's trying to make you look at because the trick is happening somewhere else. And then DIY said, oh, he's talking to someone else. Excuse me. Cruising. I understand this mentality. I see it in my students. They'll fight to the death over a minor slight, no matter how deep of a hole or how steep the penalties become. Watch a kid go to jail over it. And Urban says, behaviors of pro-Hamas demonstrators is atrocious all around the world. In Sydney, Australia, the pro-terror Free Palestine crowd was so aggressive the police told Jewish people to stay home. Exactly. And Bulldozer says, I'm a Messianic Jew, believe absolutely in our Christ Yeshua. And for those of you who don't understand, that means someone who is of Hebrew heritage or of the Hebrew or Hebrew faith who believes in or changed over to Christianity. And where are we here? Garsh says Chiang Kai-shek was Taiwan. You're thinking of Ho Chi Minh, I think. Oh, there you go. I think that's it. Chiang Kai-shek was Republic of China. All right, that makes sense. But that's what this professor's trying to say. And can you imagine being a father on the phone with your daughter visiting Israel because I guess she's going to marry somebody from down there. Son-in-law is there, or did he say it was a son-in-law? Because now I'm losing track of what I'm talking about. Husband, excuse me. So it was a son-in-law, husband, down visiting there, and then, or whatever they're doing, and then there's gunfire and screams and yelling, and she's on the phone with him, and she dies on the phone while he's talking to her, and trying to get people to understand that this is not a war in the sense that Western people tend to understand what a war or that kind of conflict actually is. And they don't. They really don't grasp it. As we move along, and this is from Newsweek, and this is something that has come up several times over the last couple of days. It says Black Lives Matter praises Hamas and sparks backlash. Praises Hamas and sparks backlash because they're down for that sort of thing. These are a group of people that have rioted, that have looted, that have destroyed property, committed arson, that have ruthlessly beaten innocent people and taken the lives of innocent people in some instances. And the excuse, and I already heard this from somebody even around here, that, oh, well, they were provoked. Really? They were provoked. They were provoked. That's like saying, and just to break it down, to minimalize the whole concept as much as possible. You buy a house and you're in a neighborhood and there's a conflict with your next door neighbor about where the fence is. And so the HOA, to avoid any problems, tells you to move your fence back 10 feet. and you reluctantly agree. And they move up on that fence and they camp right on top of that fence and they throw trash over the fence and they dig under your fence and they cause all kinds of problems and demand you keep moving the fence back and you won't do it. And they throw trash over your fence and you throw it back. And one day, because they're pushed too far, they sneak into your house and they cut your throat's children in the middle of the night. But that's justified? That's the equivalent of what's happened here, because they attacked children. They murdered family members in front of each other. You know what's going on here. Burning infants and toddlers alive. This is justified? Good luck, BLM. Good luck getting another dime from anybody in donations. Supporters of the Black Lives Matter, reading into the article from Newsweek here, movement expressed distaste for the organization on Tuesday after the BLM chapter shared a statement supporting Palestinian people. I've been a Black Lives Matter supporter since the beginning. That ends today, Natalie W. wrote on X, formerly known as Twitter, responding to the BLM grassroots statement. In a statement posted on social media, the BLM grassroots chapter responded to the ongoing fighting between Hamas militants and Israeli Defense Forces, saying, as the world is faced with deep questions about self-determination as well as desire and pray for a world of peace, we must stand unwaveringly on the side of the oppressed. When a people have been subject to decades of apartheid and unimaginable violence, their resistance must not be condemned, but understood as a desperate act of self-defense. And that's not going to fly with anybody, even people who don't like Israel, unless you're from the Middle East, apparently, or the BLM. Most people don't want to hear that. Black Lives Matter grassroots stands in solidarity with our Palestinian family who are currently resisting 57 years of settler colonialism, and apartheid, as Black people continue the fight to end militarism and mass incarcerations in our own communities. Let us understand the resistance in Palestine as an attempt to tear down the gates of the world's biggest open-air prison, the statement said. As a radical Black organization grounded in abolitionist ideals, we see clear parallels between Black and Palestinian people. I would hardly call them abolitionist. Shortly after the statement was issued, a number of other social media users spoke out against Black Lives Matter. Yeah, they've buried themselves here. People didn't like them anyways, and that's just going to make it worse. Johnny says he took a Holy Land tour back in 2010, and were even heard gunfire on a few streets away. And Leopold says, if you walk in a conflict zone that's been a conflict zone for many, many years, what were you expecting? Peace, rainbows, and bunny rabbits? Not hardly. Urban says BLM is a terrorist organization. Nothing they do surprises me. And there's Rodney. Rodney says, it seems that a few Democrats are realizing their BLM and Antifa brown shirts may no longer be under their control. And Bulldozer says he has to go. And by the way, there's no justice in killing kids. Indeed, the most innocent of all, and you're going to take your problems out on them. Leopold says the only reason they're going after kids is because the media will write about it. And Dragon says, almost like these terrorist sympathizers fooled millions of gullible Americans who didn't want to look racist. We let them destroy and loot cities and made saying all lives matter a fireable offense. And then Helter, he says, organizations that are founded on the basis of hate towards another will always find something in common. I see these two groups as fascists. Good connection. And Monkey said, watch them go from an organization to terrorist organization and be treated as that of the triple K. Yeah, and that'll put you on the FBI's watch now. And Cruising said, I'm sure something will happen to recover BLM standing in the next 12 months, right on schedule. But they were already under a lot of scrutiny, the BLM, because of how their donations have been getting spent, because people within the hierarchy, the upper echelon of leadership in the BLM, have been using a lot of that donation money for their own personal interests, buying houses, buying land, buying cars, taking vacations, so on and so forth. So they've been misusing their funds, and it's only a matter of time before at least that will catch up with them. It remains to be seen how that'll play out. Armand says, while the fighting rages in Gaza, Baltimore's safety ranking goes up for once. Does it? But that's the BLM. That's their statement. They're pissed off some of their supporters, and we'll see where that goes. That statement alone could very easily put them on the FBI's watch. But again, remains to be seen how that goes out. And apparently there's a lot of misinformation. You've got to be careful about that misinformation. And they're going after Elon Musk. And this article's from the Business Insider, and you see Elon Musk looking sad because he always does. Does this guy smile? I don't know. But they're not just going after him, they're also giving Mark Zuckerberg a hard time. And it says Elon Musk demands to see a list of violations after the EU, that's the European Union, called him out over the rapid spread of Israel-Gaza disinformation on X. And Facebook is getting the same backlash. But they're not specifically saying what the disinformation is, as far as I understand. And it could be a lot of memes, a lot of really crass memes. I've seen a bunch of them already. Pretty rude stuff, pretty stupid stuff. But at the same time, we all know that it's like crude and adolescent attempts at humor. It's not anything that I think anybody would believe. So is it really misinformation? But anyways, reading into the article, and again, this is from the Business Insider. Elon Musk has demanded to see a list of violations after the European Union told him to tackle disinformation about the Israel-Gaza conflict, which has been rapidly spreading on X. In a letter signed by Thierry Breton, the European Commissioner for Internal Market, the organization said it had indications the platform was being used to disseminate illegal content and disinformation in the EU. Breton says penalties can be imposed if violations against the EU's rules around content moderation were found. In a post on X, Musk replied to Breton's letter saying, "Our policy is that everything is open source and transparent, an approach that I know the EU supports. Please list the violations you allude to on X so that the public can see them." Breton responded to Musk, saying the billionaire was well aware of user and authorities' reports on fake content and glorification of violence. X seems to be aware of the presence of at least some disinformation spreading on the platform. The company's CEO, Linda Yaccarino, pulled out of two speaking arrangements, citing the developing conflict and need to remain fully focused on X platform safety. Researchers and reporters have identified several examples of misleading content on the platform being passed off as real examples of the conflict between Israel and Hamas. This included video game footage, old videos, and Algerian football celebrations. Okay. So here's the thing. This is what I got out of this. It's he asked, "Can you show me a list? I'm going to make that list public, and then I'll address it." This is Elon talking. And Breton responds by saying that the billionaire is well aware of users and authorities' reports on fake content, but he's not telling them what they are or giving examples. So that makes me wonder how serious he is, or if he's just trying to act like he's doing something to be political, which wouldn't surprise me at all. I'm not defending Elon Musk, but I can understand him wanting to know what they are, wanting to see examples. This reminds me of YouTube. If some of you might remember, I showed a letter from YouTube some time ago talking about penalties against users and a request to give an example of what exactly the violation is. And the email response from YouTube was basically, our policy dictates that we don't have to tell you what it is. You need to figure it out for yourself, which is a way of getting out of taking any of your own responsibility for the things that you're talking about. So I don't know. I don't know where they're going with that. Is there misinformation? There's misinformation on all social media, sure. But there's much more of it very often on mainstream media. I mean, you get more out of social media than you do out of mainstream media anymore, and that's sad. It's sad when people trust some guy on a laptop or on sitting at their kitchen table or talking to their phone than you can from like mainstream media. That's scary. That's very scary. Leopold has flipped the script now. He says that I'm misinformation, then he's going away because he thinks it's one-sided. Well, you don't have to stay. You do not have to stay. No one has to stay. There's no obligation whatsoever. I'm just stating my opinions, and you can take it or leave it. As we bounce around here, and this is from Man and Home. This is from Man and Home, and it says Christianity in America. And this is the Pope talking. That's Pope Francis here. Christianity in America is just a money-making scheme. Pope slams American Catholics for turning faith into a cash cow and ideological circus, says the guy probably wearing a $500,000 custom outfit. And Picardo is here. Thanks for joining us today, Picardo. It kind of strikes me as funny that an organization as wealthy as the Catholic Church, the man sits on a throne, holds a gold scepter and a gold staff, and is mad at American Christianity for being a money-making scheme. Let that sink in. Reading the article, let's see what he has to say. Pope Francis has criticized certain conservative factions within the U.S. Catholic Church, stating that they've replaced genuine faith with rigid ideology. He emphasized that a proper interpretation of Roman Catholic doctrine permits adaptation and change as time goes on. Notice he doesn't mention the Bible. Always think about wording. He doesn't say proper interpretation of the Bible. He says proper interpretation of Roman Catholic doctrine. And that's kind of the problem, isn't it, with Catholicism? He says, Pope Francis's words highlighted the long-standing divisions within the U.S. Catholic Church, which mainly consist of progressive and conservative factions fighting each other. Controversies have often centered around contentious issues like abortion and same-gender marriage. A wording again. Hold on. Let me back that up. They called it same-gender marriage instead of same-sex marriage. That's new. I haven't seen it worded that way in an article before. Same-gender marriage as opposed to same-sex marriage. So is that marriage between two people who identify as something? If two people identify as horses, maybe? Numerous conservatives have spoken out against Pope Francis's emphasis on social justice issues. His willingness to reconsider traditional practices, such as his permitting divorced and civilly remarried Catholics to receive sacraments, has been met with allegations of heresy from many right-wingers. Do they have to be right-wing to want to staunchly cling to their belief system in traditional Catholicism? They aren't necessarily right-wing. The Pope shared his candid thoughts during a meeting with members of the Jesuit order in Portugal, and a transcript of the conversation was subsequently published in the Jesuit journal La Civiltà Católica, an outlet endorsed by the Vatican Secretariat of State. Very interesting. Oh, and Leopold now says he was joking. Well, anyways, Urban says Catholic rainbow crosses all around. I know they'll be wearing those rainbow sashes now too. And again, from my old interview days from back in the early 90s when I did the interviews for the Boston Phoenix newspaper and the gay community, um, sexual conduct is at the forefront of their entire lifestyle. Period. It's completely sexual centric. Everything is about the sex. So when I see a priest, minister, whatever, wearing a rainbow sash and doing all of that, what's going first? Is your God going first, or is your sexual identity or preferences going first? Chris is here. He says, I ate a hamburger Friday during Lent. I'm going to hell. Uh-oh. And Dragon says, bold statement coming from a pope who almost never talks about Christ and always talks about some dubious political stuff. And Helter says, this is Rich. He sees fit to criticize the American Catholic Church, yet acquiescent to China's installation of bishops. Leopold says, what's the difference between gender and sex? Did I miss something? It's the phrasing, because the leaning towards gender identity as opposed to the sex of what you are. Sex being your gender, you're of the male sex, so you're male gender. But now people are claiming to be gender fluid and can, because they feel like it, change their gender. And so when they use gender in modern terminology, you got to be careful about the wording. The warden says he's choosing his words carefully because he knows what will happen if he flat out says what he means. Yeah, Pope Francis has, I mean, Catholics were already cast in a bad light. They've been cast in a bad light for years because of what was revealed about their cover-ups of priests who were messing around with kids, just being frank. Okay. So they've been covering up for years. They're already in a bad light with a lot of people. And now this guy wants to flow all over the place. And it's the same thing that we've seen in many modern churches recently, where they want to fill the seats. They want to butt in those seats. They want to fill the pews. They want people to keep coming to church. So they pander to all these fringe groups, all these fringe minorities of groups based off of their sexual identity and so forth. So, oh yeah, we'll accept everybody. Come one, come all. We're not going to hold you accountable for anything that the Bible might say is sinful. Hey, let's not even read those passages anymore. Wink, wink, nudge, nudge, please come to church. And they continue to lose congregations, and they continue to have people drop off from attending church, even though they're pandering like this. And the churches themselves were converted by the people that were brought in, rather than them converting the people that they claim to have been reaching out to. Oh, we're going to save them by accepting them and bring them all in. That doesn't work. They change you instead. They weren't willing to change, so they forced the churches to change. And now the churches are unrecognizable. It's the same thing, the same argument that we have about people pouring over the border. They're not coming here to be part of what's here. So they're going to try to change what's here instead of assimilating. If you're going to church and you're doing something that the foundation of the church, which should be the Bible, claims is a sin, but oh well, I stood in the kiddie pool barefoot and they sprinkled some water on me and I said the prayer, so I'm saved now, and la-di-da. You know, the Bible calls on you to change from your sinful behavior, not to continue to do it. And the churches today allow you to continue to do it and carry on. Where are we here? Gary says Rome never fell. It went from secular to religious control. And there's a strong argument for that. But speaking of people pouring over the border, here, and you already know in the United States, they have been trying to push back. Now Biden wants a wall all of a sudden, so on and so forth. Sanctuary cities don't want migrants anymore. They're all pedaling back or backpedaling. And this is an article from DW. Now Germany's doing it. Germany moves to streamline migrant deportations because everybody wants to go to Germany. Couple more comments here really quickly. Leopold says, when someone becomes unaccountable, it also means that they become unpredictable, which can also cause serious problems in the long run. And All People says, a lot of those rainbow-friendly so-called churches admit to reading the entire Bible, yet give those passages their own interpretations. Yes, I'm sure most of you have heard the one about how now the downfall of Sodom and Gomorrah is because they didn't show proper hospitality to newcomers. Yeah. So Germany now wants to throw everybody out. Germany's Interior Minister, Nancy Faeser, unveiled a new migration bill on Wednesday that would streamline deportation. The bill would give German authorities more power to enforce the repatriation of migrants who are found to be dangerous, namely criminals and people smugglers. People smugglers. That's a new one. They always surprise me in some of these articles with the way that they describe. What do you think they mean when they say people smugglers? Anybody? Can they not call it what it is? The bundle of measures includes extending the allowed period of detention for such individuals from 10 days to 28 days to give the authorities more time to prepare for deportation. Wow. In cases where the person in question lives in shared accommodation, police would also be allowed to enter rooms other than the bedroom belonging to the individual. Oh, man, those laws are messed up. Faeser from the Social Democratic Party, how can you be social and democratic? That's an oxymoron. Said that the proposal has already been discussed with local and state authorities who are responsible for deportations and repatriations. We want to cooperate closely, she said. The proposed changes have been approved by other members of Germany's governing coalition, according to Vice Chancellor Robert Habeck, who is a member of the Greens. He said the federal cabinet would soon meet to draft concrete laws. Quote, we are adjusting regulations to prevent repatriations or make them more difficult, Habeck said on Wednesday. So what, you weren't throwing criminals out before? Is that what's going on? Is that what it is? I read that part. Caleb is singing a jingle here. I don't know if I can sing that here, buddy, without getting in trouble with ScrewTube. ScrewTube gives you enough of a hard time as it is. And Rodney says, weird that the Democrats are now claiming they don't want open borders now that the United States is saturated with illegals. Well, it didn't work out the way they thought. And they're at the point now where the communities are starting to push back, and that's got them scared. I mean, maybe they're afraid they won't get reelected. Who knows? But bottom line is that they're bankrupting their cities. Their citizens are taxed to the breaking point. And there you go. Enough is enough. And now they're like, oh, we can't handle it. Well, you thought it was funny when it was all these so-called red states that were having to deal with it. Now all of a sudden that they're flooding into Chicago, and they're flooding into New York, and they're flooding into Boston. Now all of a sudden you want to do something about it. Where are we here? Urban says, everyone with a conscience in Germany is talking about Shani. She may become symbolic in all of this. Dragon says, tackling the migration issue is the biggest topic for the German right-wing party has used to gain power. Lots of Germans are very unhappy of how the government has handled migration in the last 10 years. It needs to be addressed. Caleb says that's from Monty Python. Yeah, you know what? what is the name of that film? Meaning of Life? Is that from Meaning of Life? And Helter says Ramaswamy is the epitome of someone who is a descendant of foreign-born immigrants who says, screw you, I got mine, to the undocumented immigrants already living in the United States for decades. And there is Semper Fi. Semper Fi says he's a little late. That's okay. That's okay. As we continue on, Caleb confirms it's from the Meaning of Life. I see Tom E is here. Tom E has joined us. Flukeman says everyone supports illegals, ABCD rights, BLM, and etc. could be sent to third world nations to reach them. Everything they're concerned, worried, and fighting for are first world problems. Yeah, go down there and stay there. Go down there and stay there and see how it is. Then they'll feel more sorry for them and want to send them more tax money. But now we're at the point where Germany is starting to roll back, but all they're doing is trying to streamline the deportation of people that they already know are criminals. Why were you letting them in the first place, would be my question. Don't you have enough problems in Germany? Every country that has forced migration is going to have lots of problems, lots and lots of problems. And here's something else for you to worry about. As I catch up some of the comments, Gary says undocumented migrants in America and Islamic refugees in Europe are just cover stories for importing males of fighting age to key areas. Poland wisely rejected refugees, but America unwisely didn't. And that's where you go. Spectre says I'm here and installing a new kitchen cabinets and painting them. That's a job for you. As we carry on to the Associated Press here really quickly. And yeah, we're doing the bird flu thing again, ladies and gentlemen. Here it comes. The Associated Press talking about the bird flu. Deadly bird flu reappears in U.S. commercial poultry flocks in Utah and South Dakota, and just when the price of eggs were normal again. Just when they were normal again. And remember, bird flu will not affect people. And how do I know that these birds had the flu when the FDA orders them to kill millions of them? But anyway, Minneapolis, highly pathogenic bird flu has made its first appearance in the U.S. commercial poultry flocks this season, affecting one turkey farm in South Dakota and one in Utah, and raising concerns that more outbreaks could follow. You ever seen the conditions that these birds on these industrial farms live in? It's absolutely beyond appalling. It is disgusting. I don't know how anybody can eat a bird that has been processed out of one of those farms anyways. But back to the article. The U.S. Department of Agriculture reported the avian influenza, which is deadly to commercial poultry, was confirmed in a flock of 47,300 turkeys in Gerald County, South Dakota on October 4th, and at a farm with 141,800 birds in Utah's San Pete County last Friday. And I bet you all those birds were in one big bird holding pen. I bet you they were all in one. You ever seen them? They're really long. They're like a quarter of a mile long, and it's got a dome roof with fans on the front for air circulation. The outbreaks are the first reported among commercial flocks in the U.S. since the disease struck 2 turkey farms in the Dakotas in April. Infected flocks are normally destroyed to prevent the flu spread, and then the farms are decontaminated. Before last week, the only reports of bird flu in recent months in the U.S. and they put the sentence twice. That's bad syntax, Associated Press. You don't repeat the same sentence twice. In recent months, were sporadic appearances in backyard flocks or among wild birds such as duck, geese, and eagles. I don't believe that. While wild birds often show no symptoms of avian influenza, infections in them are a concern to the poultry industry because migration birds can spread the disease to vulnerable commercial flocks. Here we go. Look at those images. Look at that turkey house. That's everything you need to know right there. Let me wind that video back. You can't hear it, but you can see it. When they show the inside of the turkey houses and how far back that goes. It's like a football stadium. Look at that. That's why they're sick, if they actually are, because I don't know if they're sick just because the FDA said so. I don't trust them. They already did this with chickens some months back. They're talking about turkeys now, but this already had. That's a terrible dress, lady. That looks awful. It looks like she jumped right out of 1972 with that dress. Anyways, I digress. They're sick because of how they're cared for. They're not cared for well at all because it's done as cheaply as possible so they can get the maximum profit out of it. Now, they already culled God knows how many hundreds of thousands of chickens. See the building? That's disgusting. That's absolutely disgusting. And egg prices went through the roof. And now, just before the holiday season, because Thanksgiving and Christmas is basically when everybody buys turkeys, now they're going to cull flocks and the price is going to go up. That's really convenient. That's really, really convenient. Catch up a couple more of these comments here as I prattle on. Flukeman says UK has created GM chickens. So is Purdue. Purdue has done something weird to modify their chickens too. Leopold says, does nobody think about the birds during bird flu? They just need some medication and they'll be back on their feet. It's cheaper to kill them. Gary said the bird is the word. Yeah, okay. Have you heard? Flukeman, the GM are flu resistant. Caleb, something else will kill him. Caleb says, been seeing a lot more wild turkeys here in southeast of Denver. Actually had 2 toms stop me on the road and started attacking the Volkswagen. Really? That's bold. And Flukeman says chickens are flu resistant. And Helter says big companies and governments have worked out just how much money they can make and freedoms they can take away with the bird flu. I don't trust any of it. Again, just because the FDA said it, how do I know it's true? How do I know that's true? And then you kill like 8 million chickens or however many they did a few months back. And then egg prices went from like about $1 a dozen to like $5. It was cheaper to buy the organic ones, which guess what? That never happened on any of the organic farms. Gee, I wonder why. Maybe because they're free range and maybe because they eat better grains instead of just ground corn. You know what I mean? If you treat them better, they're healthier. It's as simple as that. Bad enough, you're going to kill them. Monkey says, Jesus, those poor chickens, indeed. And Monkey says, I'd rather have them more out in the open rather than concentrated. But yeah, that's how they get sick. This is what kills them. This is what kills them. This is what makes them sick and sickly and dangerous. Living like that. There's probably 50,000 turkeys in that building. Because, like I said, this building's like, you see the fans up there for the air circulation. If there wasn't air circulation, they'd all suffocate. And the chicken farms are worse. And I know that they have to go through the chicken farms workers. And when they go in there, they have to wear masks. And I mean oxygen, not just like a filter. And they have, they take totes and shovels and they look for the ones with the broken legs because they can't, they're penned in so tight they can't walk and they become so weak their legs just break because, birds' bones are hollow anyways. It's incredible. Always, I know it's a little bit more expensive, but always go with organic, guys, if you can. Urban says we buy our chickens from the Mennonites in the Fraser Valley, all clean, no hormones, free range, and healthy. And I remember watching a documentary on it once, and I forget where it was, but this guy had an independent chicken farm where he raised organic chickens. And he said the FDA was down there every month testing his chickens and giving them a hard time. And there's a certain bacteria that's not supposed to be more than 500 parts per million or something. And he says his chickens typically tested about half that, around 200 to 300. But then the industrial farms from, I think it was Purdue again, industrial farms up the way were testing it around 5,000, but the FDA was letting them slide. Absolutely incredible. And Monkey says, I mean, turkeys, even so, concentrating like that is still bad. It's evil. It's evil. Flukeman says, how organic is organic? Well, the idea is that you would want them to be free ranged. You would want them to be without hormone injections. You would want them to be without genetically modifying them through some chemical process, and fed something other than ground corn. Because ground corn is the cheapest garbage they can feed them, and it's not good for them. It's not good for them. It makes them sick. Same thing they do with cows. Cows aren't supposed to be really eating that either, but they feed it to them on those industrial farms. Dragon says they'll do anything except address the root cause of the bird flu. Yeah. Living like this is what's doing it. This is absolutely heartbreaking to see. You know, and look at here's the side view of that building. And you get the idea of how far back that goes. It's incredible. Absolutely incredible. Appalling, really. Absolutely appalling. I hate seeing it. I'm not telling people not to eat meat, not to eat poultry. Just do think about it. Do think about it, because those industrial farms are very cruel. West says, West Rose, treating the animals humanely should be part of the profit margins, living 50K to a building and breathing their own feces. Yeah, exactly. And then you're eating that. And there are some people who get real spiritual about it, who believe that if you eat the flesh of an animal that has been tormented its whole life and suffered its whole life, you're taking some of that depression into yourself. There are people who believe that, and I can see that. I can see that argument. Monkey says, I remember even seeing something about GMOs on a social studies book, and it's a political cartoon picture from the early 2000s that had two apples, one that was normal size and one that had GMOs. Well, take an organic tomato at the supermarket, which is usually about so big, and then take one of those monsters that looks like a baby pumpkin that comes from the industrial farm. And it's like, oh, wow, big tomato. Yeah, but big deal. Taste them. One of them tastes like flavored water, and one tastes like a tomato. You know what I mean? Flukeman said that looks like an Amazon warehouse. Yeah. And they'll be in rows, and there's typically 3 to 6 of them, depending upon the size of the farm in that area. And they don't ever leave that building unless they're being scooped up and crammed as many as you can get into a cage to be sent to the slaughterhouse. It's absolutely terrifying to think of how these animals are treated, how they live, and then you're eating that, all those, all those hormones, all of those antibiotics, all of those diseases, all that bacteria. I mean, that's why they tell you not to eat a raw egg. Oh, here it comes. Gary Edwards says The Jungle by Upton Sinclair addressed corporate abuse with the food supply meat industry mostly. Correct, and that is actually why the FDA was formed, because Theodore Roosevelt, upon reading the book, I don't know if he read the whole book, but he certainly read the part about where it says more people died in the Spanish-American War from tinned meat than they did from bullets. And he formed the FDA because he believed it. And he took issue with it because, of course, he was involved in the Spanish-American War as part of the Rough Riders. Cruising says he's got to go. Thanks for joining us today, Cruising. But anyway, back to Upton Sinclair. Although a lot of that is addressed in the book, that's not what the book is actually about. The book is pro-socialism. And you don't know that unless you read the very last chapter of the book, which is often omitted. You have to get an original copy. You have to get an original copy of after, was it Jurgis? I forget the main character's name. When after his whole family is dead and he escapes the meatpacking plant and he bathes in the river and goes to the city and becomes part of the underworld, he gets involved in crime. I'm sure, obviously, you know the story and you know what I'm talking about. But he gets arrested and goes to jail and all this other stuff. In the very last few paragraphs of the book, he meets this fantastic socialist guy who explains to him about socialism. And he decides it's so wonderful. And Gary says, Jurgis, yes, Lithuanian. Yeah. He was really trying to. The book's brilliant until you get to the last 3 paragraphs and you're like, wait a minute, what direction is this book going in suddenly out of nowhere? And additionally, there is a final paragraph that was never put in print. I don't think. I could be wrong. A final paragraph that Upton Sinclair omitted from the story, where the police break into the little socialist gathering and arrest Jurgen because they've been looking for him. Monkey says, is Animal Farm by Orwell a good one too? Absolutely. Animal Farm is an excellent book. Anyways, with that, I will go ahead and start wrapping things up. Again, this is Coffee Talk, or at Coffee Talk Live on YouTube, or at Coffee Talk Chat on Twitter, or Prepper University on Twitter, or fistfulofradio.com, podcasting out of Atlanta Monday through Thursday at 4 and Friday at noon. Please look for me there, and that is Eastern Standard Time. Thank you, everybody who was able to join us here today. Hope you got something out of the conversation. And I will go ahead and sign off. One last look at Dusty there sitting in the corner. For those of you who can see, there's Dusty sitting in the chair, or napping in the chair. And you won't see any kittens until Friday. And remember, they are getting ready to be rehomed, so they won't be around forever. Anyway, thanks again, and we will see you tomorrow.